Okay, the next place inside of review that we wanted to take you to is the problem list. That's the second button on the right. Clicking on problem list takes us to the existing problems if there have been any placed on file previously itself. We did want to let all physicians know that many patients have problems that have been currently put into the system itself. This was a requirement for meaningful use stage 1 back in 2011, but it wasn't required at that time to have physicians actually code the problems for the patient itself. So the coding department, medical records, have been the ones that have actually gone in and entered patient problems on the charts of patients previously. So do not be alarmed if you have a patient where you go into the problem list and there are already problems that have been predefined itself. So this is exactly the problem list of a patient itself. It currently indicates that there are 4 active medical problems, there's 1 active surgical problem, and there's also something from the family history of the anemia itself. So at the top, I can also see that there are past problems. If I click on past, I can see what those are. This patient previously has had chest pain as well as had an appendectomy itself. So this is exactly how this works. To get to a problem and document anything related to it itself, I can take my mouse. Let's go to the CHF as an example. Click on CHF, and it actually takes me directly into the problem. I can see CHF at the very top. It tells me who entered the problem, who last edited the problem itself, and then I have my options. Do I want to display this on active or past? And then the other options are, do I want it to display on medical, surgical, or social history? You'll notice family history is not an option, and I'll briefly show you that when we go through into family history itself. So below that, we have status. If you click on the gray area here, there are a couple options. I can state that the CHF is acute, chronic, or result itself. In addition, I can click on this onset date here. If I know a specific onset date, I can mark it. If I know a general month, the patient reports that in 2012 that this was an onset for them. So I'm going to go ahead and say 2012, and the month that they're not sure what the month is, but let's say they said that it's at the beginning of the year, so I'll just say January 12th, and this is an approximation because we don't know the exact date itself. So I'll just click on OK there, and you'll notice it brings in the tilde, which represents an approximate date of January 12th. The ICD code, the SNOMED, those come in automatically with the problem itself of CHF. The very last thing available down here is responsible provider. If I click on this, it asks me if I want to make myself a responsible provider. That's a question, yes or no. It does not have to be addressed at this point in time, but it's something that we wanted to provide and show to you itself. And the very last thing, this permanent comments. These are comments related to the problem that can be placed in here if necessary. And if I click OK, I now see the CHF. What was updated is that the onset date was updated. On the diabetes, let's just do one more. Let's go to the diabetes, and I'm going to go ahead and say yes, it's an active problem. Yes, it's medical. However, on status, I'm going to go ahead and go to status, and instead of leaving it blank like we have in the past, I'm going to go ahead and say chronic on that there. And the patient reports that this started occurring for them roughly 12 years ago. So 2013, 12 years will be 2001. Let's go ahead and say it was approximately January 1st of that year. So there's an example of approximation of 12 years ago. I'll go ahead and click OK. And you'll notice it now listed as chronic and it is January 1st of 2001. So that's managing the problem list that's there, that's existing for patients who may have problems previously. The second thing we wanted to show is adding problems. So in the bottom right hand corner, adding problems, just click on add problem. And we can type in the type of problem that we would like to have. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the patient has a medical problem of edema. I just typed in edema itself. It starts to search for all types of edema itself that might be applicable for the patient. Scrolling through, and I don't necessarily want to get specific itself as the type of edema, so I'm going to go ahead and choose one of these generic edemas right here. I click on the edema. It turns green down here. It automatically at the very top identifies that it's edema. It's being added to the problem list. It tells me where it's being added to. This is the medical problem list itself. If you click on medical, you can choose where you want it to live. So do you want it on active medical? That's where it brought it in currently right now. Or there's a couple other options as far as where it can be at. Status, I'm going to go ahead and say acute right now. And I'm going to go ahead and say that the onset was early part of this month. And then I'm going to go ahead and check mark this current visit here. Oh, it's actually not going to let me to right now. We'll go ahead and click OK, and it adds it to our problem list. There's my edema, acute, and the onset date itself. So that's adding our problem. Now let's say hypothetically that you go into the problem list and you identify that there's a problem that no longer needs to be here. It was entered in error, something like that itself. If you click on the actual problem here, as we did earlier on our CHF, there's an option in the far right hand column of removed. If I click on removed and click OK, it just asks for the reason that we want to remove it itself. Entered in error, and click OK. And now you'll notice the edema is physically gone. So that's how you can actually remove a problem if it's not applicable. It wasn't added appropriately. It was added in error itself. You don't want to do this for things that are actually resolved, that are no longer active problems. There's a way to move them to past problems themselves. This is only for things that really have been entered in error. So that's actually managing the problem list itself. And we'll go ahead and stop this video here.